It's all right. If you've just joined in, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and it's live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's Africa's largest TV network, no doubt about that. Now, as a prompt for our conversation, which will be, of course, taking a look at the economic agenda, or what lies ahead for the president-elect, we will take these excerpts from our program yesterday, and it's compiled by correspondent Joseph Otseng.
From 2020 to now, we know that we have had a harsh reality of a global economic meltdown that has beaten into a lot of our resources. We know that we have tried to diversify the economy. We have had problems with cash crunch. We have had a lot of issues that have debilitated our economic growth, even though we have done far better than our peers in Africa. And I think for the ambitious nature of which we need to bring this country out of the doldrums. So the question and the challenge the president-elect is going to face is how to get the funds to even fund our priorities is number one. And I'm sure because he is economically attuned, he's well aware of it. We've discussed this during the campaign season. He's willing to go, but he understands those are challenges, and those are some of the things that he's going to face.
Yes, challenge is funded, but I think it's not going to be in terms of increasing taxes. It's going to be in terms of increasing the tax net. A lot of people, from what I understand, we have less than 10 to 15 people, percentage of people who are supposed to be paying tax who are currently paying. So if you're able to increase that percent to at least 70–80%, then it gives you more leverage to get more money. And then if you're able to tap better into the gas that he's been thinking about and talking about, I think that will help us. And then, yeah, the administration that is going out has been talking clearly and has worked a lot in terms of diversification, but we still have a lot to do. And that is to say, our agricultural system that we've been using as diversification, we need to increase it and add value to it.
Beyond the issue of managing interests, like Ismail has said, which is very important. If you can't manage the interest, in fact, you're not going to stay there long. You're not going to be able to achieve anything. But beyond that, it's also the vision. So a vision is what says, when I came, this is what I met in this particular sector. But when I am leaving, this is what I would like to see.
All right, now those were excerpts from the first part of our conversation yesterday. And of course, you're listening to the three guests who were with us today, where we have two guests here in the studios, and as well as a guest in our Lagos Network Center. Let's welcome Professor Mohammed Sani Bello, who is a professor of accounting at Kaduna State University. And we're glad to have you this morning, Professor Sani Bello.
Yeah, good morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Here with us in the studios also is a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, Niya Kinsiju, an investment and financial analyst. Niya?
Thank you so much. It's a privilege. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay.
There's one more person.
From our Lagos Network studios, Gbolahan Olojede, who was with us yesterday for this conversation, is back in the studios there. Gbolahan, we're glad to have you this morning.
I don't know if he's been here, but for the first time, live in the studio, I would like to welcome, Professor Mohammed Sani Bello. Good to see you here.
Thank you.
All right. Of course, Niya Kinsiju is an old face, and Gbolahan was with us yesterday. So, gentlemen, let's again. I want to start off from where Gbolahan said. You must have a vision. You must have, what you see, and then have the roadmap for achieving that vision. And I want Niyi, as an investment and financial analyst, the president-elect's vision is encapsulated in hope renewed. What does that mean?
Well, I think that to a large extent it's about the fact that from where we are coming from, there could have been challenges we had to confront, but that as we are going to, of course, discipline the challenge, or the challenges as it were, elevate ourselves beyond those challenges, and more than that, shared prosperity as a result of disciplining those challenges. I think also starting from Bolawan's imagery of vision, I think the renewed hope had in more ways than one itemized the direction and of course the vision of both start-off and of course the exit point in 2027. I read in the renewed hope that the GDP goal or the GDP target, for the government, for the incoming government, it's about $790 billion, and that is starting from an assumed position of $533 billion in 2023. That's the projection of the World Bank for Nigeria's GDP for 2023. So if it's taken off at $523 billion and intends to achieve more than $790 billion by 2027, it tells you the kind of vision, the presidents-elect want to achieve in office. And then generally, if you now also look at the undercurrent, the economic philosophy that underpins, the renewed hope, talks essentially to optimization of growth and, of course, job creation. And I think these are the twin issues that needs to be the foundation, of the economy as we move, from this 2015 to 2023 scenario of global challenges. And we thank God we've had a government that has been able to handhold us through these challenges. We had gone into 2 recessions that had no direct linkage whatever with government domestic policy, and now we are more or less on a growth path. We have experienced 8 months of consistent growth, which compared to any other jurisdiction even in the world, we are doing very well. So the renewed hope is now giving us milestones to be achieved in the next 4 years. The milestones are bounded, or rather pivoted on optimization of growth in production, growth in productivity, and of course growth in prosperity. And of importance in that manifesto is youth employment or unemployment. The renewed hope talks straight to the fact that if we have more than 133 million Nigerian youths, with a large percentage of that unemployed or underemployed, then it should be a major challenge to be addressed. So every aspect of the economic blueprint talks to how to employ these unemployed Nigerians. So if you are talking about manufacturing, if you are talking about agriculture, if you are talking about industrialization, the core driving values of those sectoral performances as they are saying is about creating jobs for the Nigerian youth, and especially the target of halving the numbers of unemployed by the year 2027 is also a measurable target, as it were.
All right, Lady Akinseju, thank you very much. Professor Sani Bello, on the 29th of May this year, when the new president will be sworn in, it will not be inheriting a tabula rasa. In other words, not a plain sheet. What kind of economy or political economy will he be inheriting as a basis for trying to impute what he has already encapsulated in his own economic agenda?
Thank you very much. I think the incoming president is going to inherit an economy that is just, coming out of recession, and that has been affected by a number of global issues, COVID-19 and general recessions out there. So, but the good thing about all this is in the renewed hope, or hope renewed. The incoming president has indicated what will consider terms of engagement between the new government and Nigerians. And of interest to me, there are three issues that are very key. Number one, this issue of youth unemployment is clearly central to whatever the new government is going to do. And in that regard, a number of policies will be coming on board. One of those such policies is the change in the distribution of revenues between the federal government and the states. The Renewed Hope indicates that it is the desire and wish of the new administration to deploy more resources to the states as against the current situation, so that the states can use the resources to stimulate development at the grassroots level. This is novel, it's very new, and I think it's, by stimulating development at the grassroots level, we are going to have many of such unemployed youths getting jobs. The second aspect of the terms of engagement between the new administration and Nigerians has to do with the new budget approach. What we used to have is a situation where the budget is anchored on what Nigeria will get in terms of revenue from oil and the exchange rate regime that is envisaged. Now, there's going to be a departure from that path. The new way of doing it is the government is going to determine what are the mandatory expenditure, public expenditure, that must be put in place for development to come up. Now, we are not going to be concerned by how much barrel of oil is going to be sold, at what price, and then what will be the exchange rate regime. The government is going to use the European Union model of budget, whereby if you are in the current situation, I mean the situation we are in Nigeria, what you are going to do first and foremost is to determine what is the mandatory capital expenditure that the government must incur in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of new industries formation, and all those things put together. Then government will now say, this is our budget. And the only thing that the government must do, and is indicated in the document that it will do it, is to control inflation, so that the amount of resources that we put forward for such developments will not trigger uncontrolled inflation. So this is also very, very new. It's novel, and it has not been done in the past. Our budget has always been based on what we think we are going to get from oil revenue, essentially. So these areas that I say constitute terms of engagement between the new administration and Nigerians, by the time they are implemented, we are going to see a new boost in the economy. We are going to see, a new way of doing things. And then finally, the third aspect has to do with the idea which has been put forward in the Renewed Hope regarding the consumption, that government is going to be very serious with regards to production of majority of what we consume, which means that will create jobs for the youths and those who are not those who are underemployed, even among the non-youth population. So these three areas, I think, once they are implemented according to the plan, we are going to see a new done in Nigeria.
All right, thank you, Prof. Let's go back to Lagos now and bring in Gbolahan into our conversation. Gbolahan, yesterday, and we're glad that you are able to join us again today. Yesterday, the issue of funding was raised by the essay to the President on special intervention as, you know, a major issue that the president-elect will have to confront, and quite understandably so, because if you consider the country's debt profile, we have quite a sizable package that the president-elect will have to bear, both external and domestic, I think in trillions of naira. I don't know, how pervasive is this funding problem, and how do you think that the president-elect will approach it, given, you know, all the items he has encapsulated or captured in the Hope New Economic Agenda?
Revenue is actually a monster as far as our financial management is concerned. All the time that we speak about unsustainability of our debt profile, the reason we got to that junction of unsustainability, it's not because the debt itself is too big. It is because we do not have the revenue to handle the level of debt that we were piling up. When you look at our debt profile, it's barely about 1/3 of what South Africa has. So what exactly are we saying? So in absolute terms, the debt is not the problem. But because you need revenue to be able to meet your obligations under a debt profile, if your revenue is not strong enough, you have to apply the brakes on how you incur debt. If you look at our revenue profile, the total revenue from all sources that are retained by the federal government of Nigeria, add oil to oil, take taxes, custom, all those things, add it, everything together. It's just about 20, it's less than what South Africa makes from VAT alone. So it should show us the kind of trouble that we are as far as revenue is concerned. And we have to definitely do something about our revenue to drive growth. How we do that, part of it have also been encapsulated in the document, in the manifesto of the president-elect. So he spoke particularly about optimization of revenue. And before you got to that optimization, under the fiscal side of that particular policy, he spoke about tax reforms. There will be need for some tax reforms. He spoke about import substitution. He spoke about infrastructure. Now, here is it. Infrastructure, import substitution, these are things that will change the environment for the business people. You cannot tax someone who is not making money. In fact, if you tax him, you're actually killing the economy. So you must create the right environment for businesses and individuals to thrive. When they thrive and they make money, then you can ask for taxes, and taxes will come. Under that same fiscal area, it also mentioned about issues of corruption, wastages in government, and all the rest. See, there's an unspoken and unwritten understanding with taxation. And that statement is that as a taxpayer, I will give you my taxes. As a government, you will use that my taxes to make life easier for me. That understanding is there, though it is not written. So where people cannot feel as much as they would like to feel the impact of those taxation, it makes it difficult for you to even ask for more taxation. Then the little one that they could have paid you, they will run away from paying it. So that is where the issue of curbing wastages, I pay you taxes, then I see that my taxes are being used to fund some unnecessary project, or to pay jumbo allowances to some people, and the rest of it. I'm not delighted to pay you another one. So part of what that policy, that document is saying is that, look, we will look in that direction. We are not going to say, oh, we have collected this level of taxes and we will now waste it on unnecessaries. No. We will make people's taxes to work for them. When people see their taxes working for them, they are more disposed to stop running away from meeting their tax obligations. When you are able to do that, you will improve collection and collection efficiency. So before you even start talking of raising taxes at all, you need to make sure that those taxes that are already in existence, that number one, people are making money to be able to pay them. And then that your collection, your capacity to collect it improves. And there is efficiency in that collection. So I'm not spending 10 naira to collect 7 naira. When you do all of that, you begin to set the right note for improving the revenue of a nation. That is not to say that we will not look in all the other areas apart from taxes. Of course, we are a nation that has, sometimes in 2005 November, we produced about 2.5 million barrels of oil per day on the average in November 2005. That same country has gone to 931,000 sometimes last year. So it shows that we moved from 2.5 to 931. There's a lot we can do with that, about that gap. While the entire world is making so much money from oil, Nigeria was not making as much as it could. In fact, Saudi Aramco made so much money that you could literally call it obscene. In fact, Saudi Aramco was accused by the United Nations and some other agencies that, look, how can only you be making that much money when the entire world is in trouble? Now, on the flip side for us, we have not been able to make that much. I understand that the curve has started to inch up. We have gone away from that 931 and come back into the 1.something million range. The new government must sustain and grow that path in the short term. But in the long term, there are several other things that it will do, which has also been encapsulated in that document that we see.
Thank you very much, Bolahon, for the points that you have raised. But I think that I want to be more realistic, and I would like us to be more realistic and pragmatic of these issues. Some of the things we've talked about are fairly primary. These are issues we will do. And I said, look, the incoming president is not going to be inheriting a clean slate. There are a number of matters on the plate, on the table that he must deal with. Bolahon a while ago was talking about a tax regime that needs to be altered, boost your revenue. We've had over the years, our challenge is revenue. What are the things that we need to do? Is it that the FIRS, for instance, has been asleep? Certainly not. We have seen the numbers grow over time. So what more are you going to do? And what more should the incoming administration do? Is it going to increase the tax rate? We hear no, not the tax rate. Okay, you're going to widen the tax net. Who are those that are dodging or avoiding taxes in the meantime that you want to bring in? I think these are more realistic issues that we'll begin to focus on, because the FRS has been in existence. At some point, was headed chair was Tunde Fowler, who himself had been in charge of Lagos Inland Revenue Service, and we had seen how the tax reforms in Lagos had led to a boost in the revenue of Lagos. So, what is it that we can see at or we should anticipate at the national level? I want to come to Niya Kinsuji. Well, the same thing. You know, we say create jobs for young persons, X, Y, Z. Look. The intention of the outgoing administration was to say they were going to create 100 million jobs over a period of time. But the last numbers we got, and this is not, of course, the fact that they didn't strive to create these jobs, but there were external factors that conjoined, against the attainment of those goals. 133 million dimensionally poor persons. So what happened? So what is the population of poor persons that we will be inheriting from the 29th of May? And how do we begin to deal with this number on a more realistic basis? But that's the point I would like us to pursue.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the whole idea has to do with energizing the space. We have established the fact that we are going into 2023 with a burden of 2 recessions, surviving 2 recessions. And it takes a resilient jurisdiction to survive 2 recessions within a span of 8 years. So, and of course, even as we have done that on our ledger, we are still on the credit side. We are still green. And after surviving that, we are still green, though at a lower level. But again, whatever the case may be, what is obvious from the renewed hope is not for me, is not an illusory milestones to be achieved. There are clear objectives to be achieved, and that had to do with first energizing the economic base. And how do you do that? Allow for an alignment between infrastructure, and industrialization. But going forward, I will start from what Prof said, the budgeting system. It's clear, and that, for me, that's quite novel. The linking the naira from the dollar. If it's properly and successfully done, it will take us away from that over-dependency on the dollar. And as it were, our budgetary system had gone, I think this is the second stage now. We had the envelope system where you project a certain amount to be shared by ministries, departments, and agencies, and you just throw it at them. If you need 10,000, your envelope may be 1,000. Go and decide what you want to do with the envelope. Then we had the zero-based budgeting too. Well, it's as if that was subsumed by reality of little resources. Now we are going into the linked naira, from the dollar base, which talks essentially about just optimization of growth. I am thinking this is more practical because, one, the Nigerian economic base is highly capitalized, beyond what we earn. So what government needs to do is to interface, with the private sector, as it were. Unfortunately, just like Oga Kingsley noted, what the incoming administration will be inheriting from this administration is the MFI, very important agency of government that was recently registered, the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, which now, of course, will supervise and oversee the Nigerian assets. For a long time, we've had assets more or less dormant. IMPA's assets, national stadiums assets, railway lines assets, roads assets, but we have not capitalized these assets. We have seen them mainly as social investments, But now, if we properly keep a register of all these structure or investment, as it were, because if you are constructing a road, you are spending money on it. It's investment. So when you do that, over time, for now, I think it is estimated that our national asset is about 18 trillion, which is still low, and there's a target to, of course, boost it to 100 trillion. By the time we have that, one, you have a base for business, for transaction with the private sector. Then we also have under management, pension under management of more than 14 trillion naira. That is another fund, waiting to be tapped. I mean, of course, we know that government will not just create money from anywhere. It is what is existing within the economic ecosystem that the government will tap into. And as much as you have all these funds, more or less not being properly employed, the more opportunity you can have. Because taxation itself is functioned on the buoyancy of the economy. So the first thing to do, is to first increase the prosperity base of the economy. Then you have more people being able to pay taxes. And I think the renewed hope is very, very ebullient, it's very strong on this. So for instance, I also see the novel aspect of the renewed hope, the NPR, creating the practical understanding of how the monetary policy rate should be applied. And it's clear. One, they probe the challenges of liquidity in Nigeria, where we have inflation, is not about high money in circulation. It is about low supply. And low supply is evidence, either in our manufacturing output, in our exports range and all that. We import more, so which means where our value, the naira value is low, when you import, you are importing more inflation into your economy. So what you need to do is to ensure, rather than constrict access to financing, to debt, when you increase NPR, the manifesto is saying, no, don't do that. Rather encourage production. Let us have more supply. Let us attend to our power, which industry needs. Let us attend to energy by increasing refinery capacity. Let us increase our capacity to produce more and targeting in the first 4 years, 2.6 million barrels a day of crude oil, and of course the general atmosphere of aligning industry with infrastructure is important to me. Why? We have had situation in Nigeria where government wanted to enhance delivery of power, for instance, and you see location identified for power generation. The transmitting equipment will be taken to another place. There's no linkage at all, So now, what the manifesto is telling us is you will only have infrastructure become functional where you have industry, for instance. You must have roads connecting, to the ports.
Okay, Nia Kenshijo, thank you. Right now, we are just, trying to speculate what the manifesto will do. It's only on paper at the moment, but like Kingsley said, we still need to be realistic, and try and benchmark tangible, things that this renewed hope, means for Nigerians. And when you talked about MFI, my mind quickly raced to AMCON, and I'm wondering, if there wouldn't be a kind of duplication of functions. I don't know.
There are two different things.
Okay, all right, okay. Let me bring in Professor Bello. Bola talked about import substitution, as a major component of renewed hope economic agenda. And ordinarily, from my own personal, perspective, I would advocate import substitution for developing countries to draw back on, dependence on foreign goods. But when I think about the fact that this would also imply a kind of, protectionism. You have to protect, your
local business.
Locally. I'm also, worried about what that might do. If it might not hurt our economy and invariably, Nigerians. So, is this sustainable? Is it a sustainable policy in this time?
I think the renewed hope actually did not just come as if somebody just sat down and came up with
because we've
a
gone
policy document.
This way,
yeah.
Before in our history.
Well, yes, we have gone that way, but I think the renewed hope, the difference between the renewed hope and probably the many other manifestos that we have seen in the past, is that it is based on certain things that can happen, and based on certain things that have happened. Let's take, for example, when we are talking about increasing revenue, we know that the incoming president is someone who's pretended over the growth of revenue in Lagos. This is something that has happened. How he did it, we know he did it, and he is the one that is going to be at the helm of affairs now. So it's something that has happened, and it can happen again at the national level. Secondly, when we are talking about the new budgeting system that is going to be anchored on what are the mandatory expenditure that government must incur for development to take place, especially at the grassroots level, and for employment to be generated for the unemployed. It's something that has happened. It is the system, the model adopted by the European Union. For member countries that are in a situation like Nigeria, they have adopted this budgeting approach, and it has worked. So I think with regards to the import substitution, we should have no fear regarding, its sustainability, because the document is clear about how it is going to happen, and it is benchmarked against what has happened elsewhere, either within Nigeria or outside Nigeria. So for me, the import substitution policy, which the Renewed Hope has captured, is something that would be sustainable and is going to be practical.
It's not going to hurt.
It's unlikely. It's unlikely.
Yes,
I would like Professor Sani Bello to further explain this novel budgeting approach that you've talked about, that it applies in the EU and which you most likely bring down to the Nigerian environment. I don't still get it. It's still about 35,000 feet above. So bring it down to about 3 feet so that we can see exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Because you say, oh, it should be based on priority items. And many will argue you don't have frivolous items in the budget. That's one, coming from the executive branch. The attitude of the legislature is a different ballgame. And we've had to engage them on Good Morning Nigeria. And they say they fight for the interests of their communities and their constituencies. So how do you align all of this? First of all, further explain to us what this EU model is all about and how it could be a fit if transplanted into our economy.
Okay, the EU model is very clear. What has been happening in Nigeria is when we come to budgeting, where we estimate our primary source of revenue, which is oil. What quantity of oil are we going to export? At what price do we envisage the oil will be purchased? And then what will be the relationship between the dollar we are going to earn from the sale of oil and the naira? So since our budget is based on naira, that is how we come about our budget, largely. Now, this EU model is saying, don't go that route. Take, for example, what are the needs? What are the infrastructure needs, basic infrastructure that you must put in place for industries to thrive, for the import substitution that we're talking about to come on board, for the welfare of the citizens? What must you spend in terms of money? Then build your budget based on that. You will see that it will, of course, may be result in a budget deficit. You know, you may have to borrow. You may have to, increase your income base. That is what is going to help you to say that, okay, this deficit, if we are going to spend 1 trillion in order to achieve this much of development in the economy, and then this is our oil revenue, which is probably 70% of it. So how do we take care of this 30%? Then you now come up with solution to that 30%. Rather than to say, okay, our oil revenue is going to be 1 trillion and we must spend only within that threshold. This is the difference between the budgeting approach, which has been the norm in Nigeria, and what European Union has been doing with regards to countries that are in similar situation like Nigeria.
But I doubt it very much, Prof. I mean, I don't want to extend this further, but I doubt it very much whether our concern, because the impression I appear to get from your explanation is that, we've been dealing with balanced budget over the years. I think the time that we attempted that was probably during the military regime. That was under Babangida, 1 or 2 years after which it was abandoned. It's either a budget deficit or a budget surplus. Because if you say you have 1 trillion naira and then you prioritize and you spend within that, or you spend outside of it. So I think that it's a matter that will continue to interrogate in terms of what needs to be done. Because if we don't get it right, we came up with the zero budgeting approach. Again, under the outgoing administration, I think after 1 or 2 tries, it was left quietly. And then the envelope system continues to endure. And many would argue that they don't have frivolous items in their capital expenses. I mean, one of the stories we took this morning, and it's been on since yesterday from the Senate, is that the lifespan for the implementation of capital expenses has been extended to the 30th of June of this year. So which means instead of saying freeze 31st of December 2022, that was when it will lapse, they say carry over, because it was also realized that for some ministries, say Ministry of Works, for instance, they do well during the dry season, and the rainy season hasn't set in yet. But by the time some of the releases are made, those releases come too late, and then you meet the deadline. So I think it's an issue that I'm not quite still clear about. I think the cobwebs will disappear.
The major thing is actually to jettison the benchmark, the dollar benchmark component of the budget. That's the major philosophy.
No, sorry?
It's to jettison the dollar benchmark aspect of the budget.
And the budget how?
Then domesticate the budget process, make it a Naira-based budget. So rather than say in a fiscal strategy paper, we say we expect that we will earn so much from crude oil, you know, and that we earn $30 billion from crude oil, for instance. We translate that to Naira.
At what rate?
Not dollar.
That's
we will now determine the rates. We will determine the rate, and then because by projecting what you are going to earn in dollars, you already limit yourself within that space. For instance, you know you can't do more than 1.8 million barrels a day, for instance, in 2023, you know. Your projection will be limited to 1.8 million barrels a day. So, but what this budgeting system is saying is that no, we are not going to limit ourselves to just that 1.8 million barrels a day. We will translate that into Naira and then bring in other sources of earnings and then determine our expenditure. Our expenditure will not be limited to what we are earning from crude oil.
But remember, remember that the benchmark in foreign currency is a reflection of your capacity to produce.
Yes, it's a reflection of your capacity to produce crude oil.
And crude oil is not priced in Naira.
Yes, so we will now determine the rates we are selling our crude oil in Naira. That becomes the input in our budgets. But most importantly, we will determine the quantum of our expenditure too in Naira. So rather than create a linkage between the crude oil sale and our expenditure, we'll create a bigger ambience, you know, for our crude oil, I mean for our expenditure.
Well, I don't know. Gentlemen, I think that it's quite interesting, but it will be an ongoing, this aspect will be an ongoing conversation. Because we've had it in the past. Some will say, look, why would you be sharing FAC or some money? Why would you be reduce it to Naira in the first instance so that the thing goes rather than in dollars and so on and so forth. So, but you also worry about your external reserves. Your external reserves will not be in Naira.
Exactly.
Unless you are going to do a swap, as we tried to do, and then of course quietly left it off. And let me not say abandoned. That's one. Second point, that again, that's what I was talking about, being more realistic, so that we know what we are faced with or what we are most likely going to encounter. We also know that the government doesn't rely solely on crude oil receipts. As part of the anticipated revenue, there are customs revenues are indicated. You also have revenues anticipated from the FIRS, which is the Federal Inland Revenue Service. So say, on the basis of the number of companies operating or those who pay tax, this is what we will get. And then you have also income from a number of other sources. So I think that's a matter that we'll take a look at. But I want to clear, you mentioned debt earlier. I want us to return to that issue of debt. I want to go back to Bolahon Olojede in our Lagos Network studios. And happily, he's in Lagos. Niyi Akisiju is also very familiar with Lagos. Look, we have a debt overhang. And the rationalization always has been, oh, our debt to GDP ratio is one of the lowest around the world. Fine. So.
He alluded to that.
We've heard that, that's fine. We have also heard that, oh, our challenge is revenue. And you ask yourself, what has been the consequence of our debt servicing? The percentages have increased. So as money is coming in, you're also, of course, paying out. And New York Institute himself is here, he's a financial advisor. You are not going to ask us not to honor our sovereign debts. Otherwise, there will be a crisis.
In foreign currency.
Of course, including the bonds. Including the bonds that we have issued. Some of it, of course, for visible and viable projects that can pay back. But there have also been questions about the capacity of some of the investments to repay. As I said, you are in Lagos. Look, people can take a look today at the blue line or the red line that has been commissioned. You look at BRT and so on and so forth. Good thing, all of those projects under Lamata came when Bola Ahmed Tinubu was governor of Lagos. The whole idea around it took a World Bank loan, I think a 25 or 30-year repayment period. Out of that, the outgrowth included LASMA, then Lamata, which was headed by Dayo Moberola for a while before he became a commissioner. And then you can see the capacity of some of these investments to repay over a period of time. But Lagos, of course, remains one of the most heavily indebted states of the Federation. How do you bring this onto a national platform?
Okay. Lagos, like you said, on the list of state indebtedness, might be the topmost. But that is not an issue because Lagos debt vis-a-vis its revenue, or by extension, its capacity to repay, is not in doubt. In fact, because people don't like to talk about it. Otherwise, I could have said Lagos, you actually have the capacity to take on more debt. But let's leave that. To make that simple, the capacity to repay is very robust and it can meet its obligation as at when due. It is slightly different from what we have at the center. At the center, it is true, Nigeria has the largest GDP in Africa, bigger than South Africa. South Africa is right next in Africa for several years to Nigeria. Here is the difference, however. The revenue in that South Africa is about 4 times that of Nigeria. So while we have a debt portfolio that is this much, 70 trillion, this trillion, and all of that, that amount vis-a-vis our GDP is sustainable. Yes, very, very robust. And that is why what government officials may from time to time put forward. But you do not repay debt from GDP, you repay debt from revenue. That is what makes the difference. So the capacity of Nigeria to sweat that huge GDP and generate enough revenue for itself to meet its obligation is what will make the difference. So while Nigeria can rightly say my debt is sustainable based on the debt to GDP ratio, it is actually not sustainable because you don't repay debt from GDP, you repay it from revenue. And we have not been able to sweat that GDP to generate enough revenue for us to be able to handle the kind of debt that we need. So that is why we must apply the brakes at the center and address all the distortions. Then we can come back and talk about debt after we have done something about the revenue. Otherwise, for now, which is also part of what you have in that document, the manifesto document, to take it easy about foreign debt especially. And then we can deal with revenue matters and come back to issues of debt. I would quickly like to talk about, you mentioned how realistic are some of these things. So I'll take national infrastructure campaign, for example. It is as real as it gets. Just before this program, I saw a commercial, Nasarawa, showing a road, I think a 74-kilometer road that has been done to link certain places. 74 kilometers appears, oh, it's not that long. But the man said something that is very crucial. He said it has reduced travel time by 3 hours. That is huge. And that is the nature of what infrastructure puts on the board. Is that real? That is a real road that is standing there, financed by Sukuk. We also have the tax credit scheme, which has done the Oworo, Oshodi, Ijesha road in Lagos. MTN is taking up a road. LNG is taking up road. So all these roads, right, there is the Obajana done by Dangote. All these schemes, all these innovations, Even the road here where this station is in Lagos, when you drive further down, you will see the Sukuk signboard somewhere there, showing that it was financed by Sukuk. So these things are real. They are being brought home. There is the National Infrastructure Plan, to which federal government has put in a seed capital of 1 trillion naira to start with. So these are the kind of things that the incoming administration will leverage on, take it further to deliver infrastructure. So they are real and they are here. In terms of import substitution, a very good example will be the refineries. This is a country that exports its crude oil, then it goes out there to import the refined product. A chunk of our foreign exchange earnings is spent importing this refined product. So how about that Dangote refinery coming on stream? How about the 3 or 4 government refineries coming on stream and being able to produce more than enough for us to use in Nigeria? Number one, that will save us the foreign exchange that we have been spending to import those products. When you save them, you have a more robust foreign exchange base. It means your exchange rate will start to improve. Your capacity to offer something to the world and earn foreign exchange is at the heart of foreign exchange stability in the country. It goes beyond that. Apart from the fact that you stop spending your hard-earned foreign exchange to do that importation of refined product, you are now producing more than you can use in your domestic economy. So you are talking to Ghana, you're talking to Cote d'Ivoire, you're talking to all the people around you to be able to provide them with refined product, and you are earning forex. That is import substitution, and the impact is phenomenal. We can take this further into several other segments that are there on that manifesto. The manifesto is in the service report. However, I think I understand what Kingsley is saying. That manifesto cannot contain all the specific deliverables, because that is not what it is intended to do. You now have to take each of those bullet points, or call it promises, in the manifesto and dovetail it into clear deliverables. My favorite example is somebody says, I'm going to give you a road. Ask him how many kilometers and where will they be? So dovetailing those things that are there into specific deliverables with specific responsibilities and timelines are things that are outside the expectation of what you put in the manifesto. And I believe that this is the step forward in this discussion.
I'll still like us to talk on the issue of import substitution, because that is the face of, or that will be the face of the incoming administration. That will be the economic policy drive of the incoming administration. And it is applied through other concepts. And one of those concepts is that we will have to have areas of comparative advantage, areas that we can really protect, areas that we can say, yes, we will have to stop importation of whatever. So are we going to be applying this economic concept in part? You've mentioned petroleum, and all that. You know how long we've been talking about, putting our refineries, bringing our refineries back to life. You know how many times administrations, present and past, have promised that the refineries, will be, revived and operational, and that hasn't happened. So I just, again, give us a sense of, the reality of this import substitution. How are we going to apply it? How is it going to be applied? And in what areas, in what sectors?
We are in a deeper, should I call it a dire strait right now, and our hands are being forced to take certain tough decisions that we seem to have been running away for a very long time. And one of it is in this area of import substitution. The oil and gas space is one, but we can also look at the agriculture. This country, at its fabric, in its early days, the economy was built on primary products. So Up till now, we speak about, oh, cotton, the pyramids of groundnut in the north, cocoa in the west, and all of that. Incidentally, the world has moved away from primary product exportation. There is no single wealthy country in the world that became wealthy by exporting primary agricultural product. It doesn't happen. Where you make money is when you are able to add value to those agricultural products, so that you don't have a situation, because this agricultural situation, incidentally, is not far away from what we have in oil and gas. In oil and gas, we export crude, we go out there to go and buy the refined product. In agriculture, what we do is that we export the cocoa, and then Cadbury at my backyard will go to Netherlands to go and import the chocolate back to this country. So when this particular policy spoke about national industrial plan, this will take all this into perspective and say, as a country, we used to have industries. We have industrial layouts in Lagos, for example. I made an example because Kingsley had mentioned, I think, Dunlop or tires generally yesterday. And I said, look, in 2006, I was in investment banking. My employer was the lead issuing house for Dunlop offer for that particular year in 2006. We raised the money. It wasn't that we didn't raise the money. We gave the money to them. What happened? There was a policy issue. If you give this guy the money to go and start manufacturing, and you open the gates at the same time for importers to come in with all sort of product from China, Indonesia, and all parts of the world, that policy, singular policy issue alone could kill the industries. I'm not saying that our industry must perform at a suboptimal level that it cannot compete. But that is actually at the heart of what the National Industrial Plan will address, to ensure that we stop all this mentality of primary product. We're able to add value to product before we send them out there, so that we can make more money from value addition. And we will put innovation and technology into this industrialization so that we are also competitive. Even if it is African market alone that we face, with things like African trade agreements in place as we speak, we can do a whole lot. So it is actually possible, it is practical to take those promises that are in the manifesto, dovetail them into specific deliverables, give it to the responsibility to people, round pegs in round holes, to run with. And we must measure their performance. The performance management is also a very important part of this discussion.
All right, Bola, would like to appreciate the points that you have raised. We were talking a moment ago, Clay, about Dunlop, because we raised it yesterday in the course of our conversation. And what you just re-emphasized now is the need for the proper handshake between the monetary policy and then, of course, the fiscal policy, so that on the one hand, I mean, you are creating an environment for them to borrow and to invest, and all of a sudden the fiscal measures come and say, look, the gateway is wide open for you to bring in tires from anywhere around the world. You run into those kinds of crises. And as the saying goes, there's nothing new virtually under the sun. And so the linkages you are also talking about in terms of value addition, when Dr. Akinwumi Adesina was Minister of Agriculture under Goodluck Jonathan, his swan song had to do with value addition. I remember him being our guest on Good Morning Nigeria at the time, and he's saying that we should stop talking about the groundnut pyramids, that the groundnut pyramids were antiquated, and that because that meant that there was no proper value addition. And so we have to move away from that, and I believe that, of course, Akinwumi Adesina at the African Development Bank will still available to oblige us with his ideas on how to quickly maximize all of this. And by the way, we see some value addition now to raw cocoa in Nigeria. I mean, we have taken, there are some chocolates that are produced in Nigeria. I take them, maybe you don't go to the shops to look for Nigerian chocolates. That's why you're still looking for Swiss-made chocolates. But I do go to the shops and I buy made in Nigeria chocolates. Very lovely. Some of them with cocoa produced in Ondo State. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Okay, I learned about the Jeep loan through Mrs. Umar who is the desk officer in Calabar South of the National Orientation Agency. I registered through her. Thereafter, I was shortlisted. At first, when I heard about the program, I didn't believe it. I was thinking it was a scam because to be hearing a thing of this and have been so rampant everywhere. But I was optimistic that it will come to reality. Before now, I was unable to own a stand. Before now, I was able to get few important ones, and that's been helping me to work, and at the same time make me own a stand where accessories are being sold. So I thank the federal government for the program.
Every day in our country, senior citizens are discriminated against, disparaged, and treated with disdain by those who ought to respect them. We are all complicit in the way we have treated the elderly members of our society as institutions, families, or members of a shared society. Every time senior citizens get offered less than they deserve for the work they do because they are old, poor, and desperate, we are failing them. Senior citizen loses a child, and wow, they must be responsible for their death. Every time a senior citizen gets labeled a witch, is called mad, and shooed out of the way because they have no memory of where they were headed and look unkempt, we are failing them. We say, I beg you don't old, make it do die, make everybody for rest. To ailing parents, uncles and aunts. That's discrimination. That is neglect. When you see an old woman getting beat up and being accused of witchcraft, do not turn the other way. Stop and teach people that white hairs, wrinkles, and hunchbacks are no evidence of witchcraft. Aging comes with a memory decline. Sometimes it's not out of place to have elderly people lose their way, forget details of their lives, and how to properly take care of themselves. When they get to this stage, they deserve your empathy, not scorn. Our ailing fathers, mothers, aunties, and uncles are deserving of quality healthcare and peaceful transition. Make their last moments memorable. Senior citizens have paid their dues. They deserve your care. Stop all forms of discrimination against them today.
All I need to say about the second River Niger Bridge, 21 years ago, as I came onto this throne, it will normally take you 3 to 4 hours to cross the bridge. I mean, if you are going to Lagos, you spent almost half your time on the bridge, and you were stuck on the bridge before you came across from Asaba this morning. Now, could you imagine how the people of Onitsha and Asaba have endured such a situation for over 25-30 years? This is reality. We cannot overestimate the importance of the second River Niger Bridge. To express appreciation to our President, Muhammad Buhari, for being the vehicle for the execution of this monumental project.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're live on NTA's network service. Our three guests are still with us: Bolahon Olajede in Lagos, Professor Sani Bello right here in the Abuja studios, and Nia Kinsiju also here in the studios. I want to come to Professor Muhammad Sani Bello. Prof, I know that some persons will say one of the low-hanging fruits is fuel subsidy. Remove fuel subsidy, remove it, and then the money that we are paying on fuel subsidy will become suddenly available for development purposes. But we know what the knock-on effect will also be. And fuel subsidy is provided not just by the federal government alone, but by the 3 tiers of government. They subvert the subsidy regime that we have. The corollary argument is, why don't you run apace with the rehab of the refineries? If Dangote comes on stream whenever, that's fine. But get the 3 refineries up to scratch. And we had that argument last year, that by this year, those refineries, 2, 3 of them, of course, will be fixed, and then it would not be a good time. And the target was end of June this year, when the refineries will come on stream, there will be some measure of supplies. So you take off the subsidy and the shocks will not be intense. But the argument still is that if you were to regard fuel subsidy as a low-hanging fruit to boost government revenue, the knock-on effect on the various rates, inflation for instance, unemployment rate, even misery rate, will escalate, because we know what it is. I mean, you take off, fuel prices shoot up, all kinds of pressures would suddenly we just also come up. How do you manage this kind of potentially delicate decision?
Well, I think with regards to the fuel subsidy, we have not gotten it right all this while, because at the beginning of Muhammadu Buhari's administration, he was of the view that there was no such subsidy. It was just a fallacy and the rest. And then we have now seen that 8 years of the administration is ending. We are still paying for fuel subsidy. At a point in time, there was this report that says if we sell fuel at the pump price at the rate of 400 naira or 420 or so, that I mean, it's possible to sell fuel at that price, and then that will be the effect of subsidy removal. We came to a time when we are buying fuel at 500 naira per liter or even more during the period of scarcity, and we are still saying that there is a subsidy. So I think we have to do a real overhaul of this subsidy issue. We have to know what are the problems regarding the subsidy, who is really benefiting from this subsidy, and why is it that successive governments are not able to deal with it. I think there is something about this subsidy that we still do not know, or we still do not understand, and that is the reason why governments are not able to deal with the subsidy. But for me, removal of subsidy truly is the only way to, you know, to get it right.
The misery.
Well, all this misery are artificial. When people are buying fuel at 500 or even more naira per liter, with even the subsidy regime on, so what are we talking? What are we talking about? Right now, there is no single fuel price in Nigeria. You go to a filling station, you buy according to their price.
That's what they say.
Yes.
Now, even with the subsidy, you understand, we are buying fuel at a very excess. So if you remove the subsidy, what will happen?
No, you see, that is why, because the subsidy is what is creating the scarcity. Those who are benefiting from the subsidy, they will buy the fuel at the subsidized rate, and then will now export it to some other countries where there is no such subsidy. They buy fuel according to, you know, the market price.
You know, Prof,
that is what is happening. It's all part of the reason why we don't have. We have the scarcity, the perennial scarcity which we witness with regards to fuel.
Yes. You know, Prof, I'm sorry to interject. Again, these are matters that we'll have time to drill into. But I was also concerned about the supply side of it. Supply side. What the prices we are talking about, whether somebody is buying a liter for 500, is a function. One of the factors will be landing cost. Fuel is landing from where? Those people who are refining it in Europe, or in Belgium, or wherever they are, they don't have two heads. Each of the human beings there has only one head like the rest of us. How do we deal with our supply challenge? And then we keep hearing about smuggling, as though smuggling were a legitimate business. And by the way, take a look at the neighboring countries around us, whether as far as Sudan, Central African Republic. How many vehicles do they have in those places?
Okay, you quickly, I don't know.
I think to allay our fears with regards to some of these things, especially when we look at the Renewed Hope document. You see, the president-elect, Asuwaji Ahmed Bola Tinubu, is someone who has performed. We have seen what he has done in Lagos. We have seen his track record. So some of the things that we say it happens with other, president is not likely going to happen with him.
Well, one thing we must also know is that this is Nigeria, not Lagos. Lagos is just a fraction of Nigeria. But in less than 60 seconds, I know you want to also chip into Kingsley's question. But remember also that part of the hope Nigerians expect is a restructured Nigeria. Some translate it to mean, giving more powers to the federating units. I saw somewhere in the economic blueprint that the revenue sharing formula between the states, is this an indication of devolving more powers to the states?
I think so. It's because majorly revenue allocation is important to the restructuring formula we are talking about. So now if you have some more percentages going to the states, for whatever they are going to do, and don't also forget now that you have electricity generation, distribution and all that, the value chain now devolved to states, railway lines, construction devolved to states too, and that means they will need more money to do this, and of course it will impact the grassroots. But most importantly, I believe that this subsidy should be removed. I believe that when subsidy is removed, we are shaving off more than 6 trillion naira on consumption, more or less in the budget, and you are able to redirect this to more productive activities. If we are able to invest at the 3 tiers of government or 2 tiers of government, invest in power generation, for instance.
When do you remove the subsidy? Is it a low-hanging fruit?
Immediately, because the president-elect had made a commitment that the subsidy will be removed, and also created conditions to attenuate whatever may be the mystery issues you are talking about. And that is important.
So you watched yesterday. Okay, so Nigerians should expect a removal of this subsidy, maybe Q3 2023,
as soon as the president-elect is sworn in. As soon.
Okay.
No, well, I think Claire, the issue is not whether to retain or remove fuel subsidy. Most are agreed that the subsidy regime has to go, but it is when, and so you remove fuel subsidy, and then you are still importing your refined petroleum products.
I think before 45,000 local barrel, local production.
Let me also. I just want to put. I'm not asking a question. Okay. There is a comment that we should also make. And I've raised it on Good Morning Nigeria in the past. We keep talking about getting our local refineries to function. If those refineries work, I have not heard and I have not seen anybody talk about the network of pipelines. All we hear is that the pipelines are old, some of the pipelines are old, some were ruptured by vandals and so on and so forth. There's been no audit of the integrity of our current pipelines. That is an assignment that we also need to work on.
I think
so
that's
AKK.
AKK is the
guy. Sorry, we don't have much time. Yes, Mr. Iniyu Akinshiju, investment and financial analyst, would like to thank you. This is, of course, conversation that will keep up even after Mr. President-elect, has been inaugurated. Professor Mohammed Sani Bello, Professor of Economics and, Department of Accountancy, Kaduna State University. He was also Director General, APC Campaign Council, Kaduna State, and Chairman, Kaduna State Local Government Service Board. Let me also appreciate Bola Olojede in Lagos. He joined us from our Lagos studio. He's a public policy analyst. Bola, thank you very much for your contributions again today. Gentlemen, thank you and have a wonderful day. So let's look at sports now. Former world heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua has vowed to retire if he loses to American Jermaine Franklin on Saturday. And of course, in Wimbledon, champion Elena Rybakina sails through to the Miami Open quarterfinals. So all of these in our sports desk.